Hi everyone, and welcome to today's presentation on sleep and weight loss. I got a lot of questions about this, so I hope you will find today's presentation helpful. And I think the papers I've chosen will really drive home how critical adequate quality sleep is in your weight loss efforts. So in this first paper, they took 10 overweight people and fed them a subcaloric diet so that they would lose weight. They either slept these 10 people for 5.5 hours or then later for 8.5 hours, and then compared, only changing how many hours per night they slept, looking at their fat loss, their fat-free mass loss, as well as their respiratory quotient, which I will get into. So it's not the weight loss that matters, but the changes in the body composition. And I think that'll be illustrated here. If you look in this graph on the y-axis, the one that's going up, we have the weight loss in kilograms. And these two boxes, the open circles, are the 8.5 hour sleepers, and then the closed circles, the black circles, are when they only slept 5.5 hours. Okay? And then the little boxes is just the spread of the values, and the line that cuts between the two boxes is the average. So on average, between the 8.5 and the 5.5 hours, they lost roughly the same amount of weight. So that's about 2.5 to 3 kilograms. And the little asterisks that you see for the other two columns tells you that based on statistics, that those numbers are significantly different. So there's no asterisks on the total. That means they lost the same amount of weight, whether they slept 5.5 or 8.5 hours. So you would think, hey, great, I can sleep 5.5 hours and still lose weight. No. The difference is when we go and look at the fat loss and the fat-free loss. So if you look at the fat loss, the open circles, which is the 8.5 hours, they lost more weight in kilograms, almost 2 kilos, compared to those who only slept 5.5 hours, where it wasn't even 1 kilogram. And that little asterisk tells you that those two numbers are statistically significantly different. So the people who slept the less, although they lost the same amount of weight, they actually lost less fat. And if you're not burning fat, what are you going to burn? You're going to burn your other tissues, your muscles, and your bone. And that's exactly what we see. If you look in the far right for the fat-free, which is your lean mass, so bone and muscle, you see that the group, the open circles that had 8.5 hours of sound slumber, they lost a little bit over 1 kilogram. But the ones who slept only 5.5 hours lost 2.5 kilograms. And if you're like me and you're in your 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you are doing everything you can. You are lifting heavy things. You are sleeping well, getting that deep sleep so you get that growth hormone production to build lean mass. And you're also increasing your protein intake, all to preserve lean mass, right? Because you know what killed, old people? Falling and breaking a hip. And that's a product of losing lean mass as we get older. So to sum up this slide, with the 5.5 hours of sleep, you had, actually this is a typo here, you had the same weight loss, but you had less fat loss and more lean mass loss. With the 8.5 hours of sleep, you had similar weight loss, but you had more fat loss and you had less lean mass loss. So definitely, which one do you want to choose? The 8.5 hours of sleep. So I mentioned the respiratory quotient. The respiratory quotient is just the ratio of the carbon dioxide produced. So when you breathe out carbon dioxide. When you breathe in, you take in oxygen. So it's just your carbon dioxide divided by oxygen consumed. Say, what? Why do we care about this? Well, when you're burning a lot of carbohydrates and you're burning a lot of sugar, you're releasing a lot of carbon dioxide. When you're burning fat, be it dietary fat that you've consumed or your own endogenous fat stores, you actually promote using oxygen in that process. And so the more carbon dioxide produced and the less oxygen consumed means your respiratory quotient is going to be closer to 1. That means you're more burning sugar for energy. The less carbon dioxide produced and the more oxygen consumed mean you're burning more fat for energy. So that respiratory quotient is going to be closer to 0.7. So when you're burning fat for fuel, you're like 0.7 or less. If you're burning carbohydrates for fuel, you're going to be like, 0.85 to 1. I even saw you can be like 1.2. So what they saw, this is a graph of the respiratory quotient versus time after breakfast. So the 0 time is when they're still fasting. And then 1 is 1 hour after breakfast, 2, 3, and 4. And again, the solid circles are the ones that slept 5.5 hours. And you can see those respiratory quotients. That's like 0.8. It goes above 0.8. It goes back down to about 0.8, lower, and then down to, like 0.83 or something. Above 0.85, maybe 0.86. Then it goes all the way below 0.8. So they're burning carbohydrates for fuel. And after they eat, breakfast, that goes up. And then as they're not eating after breakfast, it goes back down. If you look at the open triangles, the people who slept 8.5 hours, when they wake up fasted, they're actually closer to burning fat for fuel, right? And they go up a little bit with breakfast. Maybe they had some carbs, so they're burning those carbs. And then it drops down during the day. And you can see the bars that go below the triangles. That's the range of values of people burning fat. And the other bars that go above the circles, so that's the bottom, and all the other numbers are the range going above, showing that they're predominantly burning carbohydrates. And again, the asterisk tells you that there's a significant difference. So same number of calories, same people, but just varying how many hours they slept either puts them in a fat burning mode or forces them into a carb burning mode. So which one do you want to be? We want to be fat burning machines. This is something I go into a lot of detail in my paid courses. So summary, sleeping 5.5 hours compared to 8.5 hours significantly impaired burning fat when in a caloric deficit. So when you're reduced your calories so that you can burn fat, if you're not sleeping, you can still lose weight, but you're going to lose less fat and burn more lean mass, which you don't want to do, compared to if you're sleeping 8.5 hours. So this is one of my favorite books for sleep by Shawn Stevenson called Sleep Smarter. And so this is just a summary of one of the chapters in his book. Excess weight and sleep. So cortisol is that stress hormone. I mean, we call it a stress hormone, but it's good. Like, you need cortisol because in the morning, your cortisol rising is what wakes you up and makes you ready to start your day, right? People who have, adrenal fatigue and their cortisol is very low in the morning, they have issues waking up and they feel groggy. So when you eat, anytime you eat anything, I don't care how healthy it is, it's a stressor on your body. So people who are at a healthy weight, after they had a meal, their cortisol increased by only about 5%. But people who were overweight had an increase of 51% in their cortisol levels. So cortisol is your anti-sleep stress hormone. So especially if you're overweight and you're eating close to dinner and you're getting a 51% increase in your cortisol levels, this is going to affect your ability to go to sleep. So that inability to go to sleep is going to cause more cortisol, right? It's going to inhibit your melatonin. It's going to prevent you from burning your own endogenous fat stores, which is going to lead to an increase in being overweight, which is going to lead to more. So it's a vicious circle. So high cortisol results in high blood glucose. I keep forgetting. I thought I had my little circle thing covered, but I guess I didn't. Lower insulin sensitivity and increased inflammation. And again, these are all topics that when I run my paid course in January, I'm going to go into a lot more detail. So to sum up, sleep and weight loss. Poor sleep inhibits fat burning by increasing cortisol and favoring burning sugar for energy and protein. Sugar and protein for energy rather than burning fat. And burning fat is where it's at. That's what we want. Poor sleep also leads to sugar cravings, and that makes it really hard to make good choices. Because if your cortisol is high and your body is thinking, I need to run from that bear, that tiger, I need quick sugar, your brain is going to make you crave sugar. So your sugar binges or carb binges, it's not a lack of will. These are just strong hormonal impulses from your brain that is very, very difficult to ignore. Okay, so it's good to understand the physiology behind these cravings so that you don't internalize them and let them be a marker of your self-worth, because they're not. You just have to figure out how to break this cycle. Excess weight also increases cortisol release after meals, inhibiting fat loss. So that's another reason for not eating too close to bedtime, right? So we want to try and break some of these cycles by understanding the physiology behind them. So, are you ready to start sleeping better? Yes. So, after I had completed this slideshow, I watched a 1.5 hour seminar on supplements from one of the nutrition certifications that I'm taking part in. Another one, I know. I like learning. And I learned something that I really wanted to share with you guys today, even though it's not about weight loss. So she was talking about COVID and insomnia and long haul syndrome. So I'm sure you've heard about people who get really sick with COVID, and then it's 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. I know people who were sick with COVID in April and they're still sick in December with just fatigue, muscle pain, insomnia. And she explained this, and I thought, wow, I have to share this with the group. So tryptophan is an amino acid that you get from food. So it's a component in proteins. In all your proteins, there's this amino acid called tryptophan. And you might know, because people always say, oh, you eat turkey at Thanksgiving and you just want to go to sleep. It's the tryptophan. Well, tryptophan is converted to serotonin. That's a neurotransmitter. That's your feel-good hormone. And then as the day goes on, serotonin is then converted to melatonin. And that's my, it's sleepy time hormone. But what happens when your body is just battling a high viral load as an infection with SARS-CoV-2 is that the macrophages uses tryptophan to make a compound called quinolinic acid. And so by the immune system consuming all of the tryptophan, you lose your serotonin. So now you feel anxious, moody, depressed. And you also lose your melatonin. And so now you have insomnia. And then that insomnia is going to lead to more anxiousness, depression, mood swings, right? Which then can lead to more insomnia. So again, you see this vicious circle happening. And so she suggested that people with long haul syndrome might benefit from taking a slow release melatonin as a way to break that cycle and to start sleeping better. And then definitely pay a lot of attention to foods like eggs and turkey and nuts and seeds and beef that are high in tryptophan in order to replenish that in your body and allow healing to occur. So in times of high viral load, as an infection with SARS-CoV-2, the immune system consumes the tryptophan instead, so you have a decrease in melatonin leading to insomnia. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, and I will be on tonight at 8 p.m. I'm going to post the link to the Zoom, and I'll broadcast it into Facebook if you guys have any questions. Thank you. Bye.